Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny and today we're going to be looking at some recent horror reads. If you've watched any of my recent videos, you know that I have wanted to get back into the horror genre because I really found that I liked it last year, and up until this point of the year, I hadn't really, or up until I should say early May, I hadn't read a ton of horror, and so I tried to pick up a lot of horror novels in May, and I've continued that into June, and so I would like to talk about all of the ones that I've read recently. We're going to start with my 3 stars and work our way up to 5 stars. So being that we're talking about horror novels today, I thought it was fitting that I wear my To Whom It May Concern t-shirt. So let's get started and talk about some books. So my first 3-star is House of Hunger, and this is probably the book that I've read the furthest away. I read this in the beginning of the year. And I can't remember if I did this or if I talked about this in one of my wrap-ups, because that was towards the time that I was doing monthly wrap-ups instead of my highs and lows. And due to the fact that I rated this 3 stars, I just thought this was okay. I can't remember the main character's name, but if you've never heard of this book, you follow a girl who is definitely kind of down on her luck. She is in not a very nice job and is not treated very nicely. And she knows that in the world that they are in, there are vampires, and you can become a housemaid, a blood maid, I think is what they call them, and for these vampires. And it's very taboo. People in society do not like this profession. It's very much a parallel with people's views on prostitution. That is kind of seen throughout the book. It's also, they talk about the dangers of this profession. So you follow this young girl who decides, because of the fact that she's down on her luck, she doesn't really have any other options, that she's going to become a blood maid. And she kind of leaves everything behind and goes to this house and is introduced to this world, and it's very dangerous for her, and she kind of has to figure out how to traverse this new world that she's in. And you also have like some mysteries going on in the background. She's not privy to a lot of information in the house, and so she kind of has to figure out like how best to navigate certain situations. Like I said, I thought that this book was okay. I don't think that it was super gripping in the sense that I didn't feel the need to pick it up. I wasn't super concerned with her or for her, even though she was in some really precarious situations. And to be honest, it's been a couple of months, or more than a couple of months since I've read this, and I don't remember a ton of what happens, which is never really a good sign. But it was fine. There was nothing wrong with it that I can remember. I don't remember hating anything about it. It was just kind of an average book for me. The next 3-star read is How to Sell a Haunted House. So this is my second Grady Hendrix book, and I specifically picked this one up because the last book that I read from him was a 3-star, and that was the Southern Book Club's Guide to Killing Vampires. And I think that Grady Hendrix writing is probably just always going to be average for me. Don't come at me, because I know Grady Hendrix is like beloved. I don't know, like I don't feel like, I feel like this book could have been very atmospheric. There are creepy dolls. There's a house that obviously has some sort of possession going on with it, and I never really felt in the story. If you haven't heard of this book, I believe this is a 2023 release, maybe 2022. But this is about a daughter and a son whose parents are killed in an accident and under kind of mysterious circumstances. And the son has always lived in the neighborhood with the parents, and the daughter has kind of gone off and is in charge of her own life and has kind of, I don't want to say cut ties because she still talks with everybody, but she was very separated from her family. And when their parents die, they have to figure out, to clean out the house and to sell the house. And in the midst of doing that, some really creepy things happened. Their family, or their parents, were puppeteers, and so they collected puppets. There is And so if you don't like puppets, don't read this book because they're all over this book. There's some really creepy scenes of the stories that happened when they were children that involved these puppets, and as they're cleaning out the house, some things with the puppets go on, and I won't say more, but I just, like I said, I just didn't feel in the story. So it's a 3-star for me. The next 3-star is City of Nightmares. This book is a 2023 release as well. I was really excited about this book because it was pitched as kind of a weird city where you can become your own nightmares. Specifically, I was told that there is a person in the book who becomes like a giant spider and eats people. And so you enter this world, you follow, I'm not going to be able to remember her name, but the main character is a young girl. This is a YA horror novel. And the young girl her family has been killed. And you learn how throughout the story. And she's very anxious throughout the entire book. One of the things I really did like about this book is the cowardice that she portrays in herself. She is absolutely terrified to live in this city where nightmares come to life. And so the world in and of itself is, people are afraid to sleep. And so they have like drugs that you can take. In the water there are chemicals that prevent people from dreaming, because if you dream and you have a nightmare, then you can turn into your nightmare. And there are certain people who turn into their nightmares and come back and are sane people, but they are changed physically. And then there are other people who change into their nightmare who never come back into their humanity. And so that part of the world was so fascinating. And the storyline, you follow this girl who is working for this, not a cult, who recruits people and tries to give people hope, and helps. They do a lot of recruiting and helping out people who don't have like living situations and things like that. And you follow her pretty much going to lose a position at this, not a cult. And she takes a job, and this job ends up leading her down a road that she didn't realize, leading her to an adventure, I'll say, and a very scary adventure for her. And she runs into another character, the other like character I would consider main character, and they have to kind of work through the situation that they've been put in together. So I think my main problem with this is the fact that it was YA, which I didn't realize when I picked it up, which that was my fault. I don't think it went far enough into the horror aspects. The nightmare elements were really cool, and I just wanted more of that. And that's unfortunately not what this book kind of delved into. It more so focused on the two main characters and their storyline and living in this kind of nightmare society. And so we didn't get to see more of the world. So it really does just focus on the characters, which usually I'm okay with, but I think because of the fact that it was YA and the characters were very young, I just didn't connect with them as much as I connected with, I wanted the world building and things like that. So it was fun. It was a quick read. I read this in, I think, 2 days. So it's something that if the premise sounds interesting to you, I would say pick it up, but it was a 3-star for me. Onto the 4 stars. The first is a book that I've already talked about with you guys, and that is Sisters of a Lost Nation. If you haven't heard me talk about this book, it focuses on a young girl who lives on an Indian reservation with her family, and girls start going missing from the reservation. And so the book jumps back and forth. It has dual timelines between her in present day, where her sister is one of the missing girls, and then 33 days in the past, when like you kind of see culminating events that lead to the events of the day. And so it's kind of a mystery, but it's also a horror novel because they bring in the mythology of different tribal nations, which is really cool and really fun. That was probably my favorite part, which is one of the reasons this got a 4 and not a 5, because the talk of the mythology was just sporadic. It wasn't a primary focus. The primary focus was the mystery of the missing girls and Anna, the main character, solving the mystery. But yeah, it was a really good book. It also brings up a lot of really good points of what Indigenous peoples deal with as far as law enforcement goes, because of the fact that reservations are considered sovereign land, and so laws work differently because of the fact that they are under their own laws, and so local governments don't a lot of times lend resources to investigate reservations, and so the women who were missing from these reservations didn't have proper resources looking for them. And the author actually puts in the author's note information about what's going on in the United States right now with all of that. And so I do think this was a really good book. I do wish that it had dug into a little bit more of the mythology, but I still thought that was a really cool aspect. The next 4-star read is The Helm of Midnight. This is a series, as well as The City of Nightmares is also a series. So in The Helm of Midnight, you have a city where you follow, I don't know what to call them that you would understand. They're essentially guards, city guards. And they are at an event where they are showing off the masks. So in this society, you have death masks. So when someone dies, if they are a surgeon who has a lot of medical knowledge, they can actually pay for a death mask to imbue their knowledge into the mask. So whenever you wear the mask, you then know everything that that person knew. And so it's helped society progress. They have famous singers that have done this. They have detectives, famous detectives who have death masks that help the city guard solve mysteries and things like that. And so that part of the world was really fascinating to learn about. But the purpose of me mentioning the masks is there is also a mask of a serial killer. And I think the serial killer existed 10 years in the past. So there are dual timelines in this. And you get the serial killer's perspective, and then you also get the perspective of this mask going missing, and the murders start happening again. This book was very fascinating. It was as dark as I wanted it to be. It's very graphic in certain, and I guess I shouldn't say that. It wasn't like turn your stomach graphic, but it definitely explains some things that. One of the traits of the serial killer is that he manipulates the human body to form flowers. And so it's a lot of visualization of blood and gore in beauty. I just really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really good, and I'm excited to continue on with the series. The next 4-star book is A House with Good Bones. So this is another T. Kingfisher book. I've been wanting to read more of their works, and this follows a girl who is called by her brother, and her brother tells her that she needs to come and visit her mother. So she comes to visit her mother at home and realizes that things are not quite right. Her mother seems very agitated, very terrified of her house. Her house has changed. Typically, her mother has very bright and like a lovable living environment, and it's become kind of this sterile place. She's painted all of the walls white, and she wants to know why. And so you kind of get to dig into what's causing this discomfort for her mother. This book was very atmospheric, very creepy. There are a couple of scenes in this that will just make your skin crawl, and I love this book. Really reminded me of The Hollow Places from T. Kingfisher. So same author, just different horror novels, and they're absolutely not the same storyline, but just some of the elements of this reminded me of that. Something else that I really enjoyed about this book, other than the atmosphere, was the main character's inner dialogue. She's very logical, and so she tries to kind of talk herself out of thinking that things are wrong. It was really good. So I'm excited to have another T. Kingfisher book under my belt, and I'm glad that I enjoyed it. The last 4-star read is Dead Silence. I buddy read this with Leandra, and I will link her channel down below. This book was so fun. Once again, another atmospheric read. If you want just kind of a a tagline of what it's about. It is Titanic in space. You have, I think I described this on my last video, so I won't give too much detail since I've already talked about it, but you follow a team of people who go around and fix beacons on this ComNet, like the communication center, and the communication center in space, I should say. And so they're going around fixing beacons to make sure that people can transmit messages back and forth between ships. And they're way out at the edge, and they hear a distress beacon. And they decide to go out and investigate, and the distress, oh my goodness, I can't speak. The distress beacon ends up being from the Aurora, which is a ship that went missing 20 years ago. And so they decide to go and dig about in this ship, and bad things happen. The amount of visualization that I could do just reading this book was fantastic. I loved the fact that when you were reading, I just hope that they make this a movie, because it was absolutely fantastic as far as the visuals go. I also think the pacing of the book was really nice. It's very tense the entire time, and you don't feel like there's any lulls. There's also, Leandra and I, when we were buddy reading this, we were messaging back and forth, and we had all these theories spinning. So it definitely makes your brain think about, like, okay, what could possibly be going on? And we were right some of the time, we were wrong a lot of the time, which I think is nice for a book to not be predictable. And so this was really fun. I'll definitely read more by this author. The one thing that I will say that kind of made this a 4-star and not a 5-star read from me was that it does have a couple of things that I do think that if the book was just a smidge longer, like 50 pages, that could have been better explained. I think a lot of the loose ends were definitely tied up at the end, and what happens is very interesting and intriguing, but I do think that there are just a few things in the story that could have been wrapped up a little bit nicer. And the last book is my only 5-star read on this list, and it is a book I've already talked about, but I'm going to talk about it again because it was just fantastic, and that is The Children on the Hill. This is a Frankenstein-inspired story where we have 2 different timelines. We have one in the 1970s and one in 2019. And in the 1970s timeline, we follow some children who live with their grandmother, and their grandmother works for an asylum and helps rehabilitate people, and is known to bring home some of her patients to try and help reacclimate them into the world. And she brings home this young girl and tells her grandkids to befriend her and treat her like family. And automatically we know that there's something wrong. The young girl doesn't speak. She's very secretive. There are some scars on her body that we're not sure where they came from. And so we have this mystery going in the 1970s. And then in 2019, we follow one of the children's perspectives, and they have become a monster hunter. And they hunt like Loch Ness Monster, Sasquatch, and they have a podcast, and so they've become kind of famous. And you also have these little snippets throughout the book of this monster book that they created when they were kids, of like how to kill monsters and how do you know that somebody is a monster, and that was really fun. I had a lot of fun with this book. I know I've read some bad reviews on this book, and I've read some really good reviews on this book, so I don't know if this book is pretty polarizing. I haven't heard anybody talk about it on BookTube, but on Goodreads, I've read from both sides of the spectrum, but I just had a lot of fun with it. I loved the monster aspect of the book, the fact that we are, we're following a monster hunter, and the kind of the connection back to the Frankenstein story. Oh, also something I didn't mention, there's a mystery going on with the monster hunters storyline, because there are girls who are going missing all over the United States, and they receive an email from someone who is essentially like taunting them and saying like, another girl goes missing and you're not going to help her. Like they're trying to antagonize them into action. And so we have that mystery to solve as well as the 1970s. This was just a really fun read, and I have really enjoyed my Frankenstein retellings or books inspired by Frankenstein. And so this was another one to add to my list of books that I loved that have those kind of themes in them. So that's it for my list of recent horror reads. If you guys have any horror novels that you've really enjoyed and that you would recommend, especially for a beginner, because I have not dived into the genre at all. I've just kind of been picking up things here and there that I'm interested in. So if you have ones that you absolutely think I should read, leave them in the comments below. I would love to know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.